This film contains triggering and sensitive material, with mentions of violence, homicide, sexual assault, and crimes against women. Viewer discretion is advised. If you find yourself feeling triggered or in need of immediate emotional support or crisis intervention, please reach out to the resources listed below. The Highway of Tears, also known as Route 16, a road stretching from Prince George to Prince Rupert, British Columbia, has witnessed many tragedies. Over 40 Indigenous women have gone missing or been found murdered along this highway. However, the true extent of this devastation remains unknown, with countless stories left untold and unreported. Joined by grief and resilience, our youth venture upon this highway of tears, seeking to comprehend the profound impact it has upon Indigenous women throughout Canada. It is a sacred space where spirits whisper, and we offer prayers for our lost sisters to find solace. We pray for their families, burdened by pain, to discover peace within their hearts. And we impart upon our younger generation the wisdom to stand unafraid, for they are not mere statistics. They are warriors, united with the strength of their ancestors. They forge ahead, resilient and unwavering in their search for answers, their search for the truth and the solution to protect our sisters. Throughout history, Indigenous women have been objectified and subjected to harmful cultural attitudes and stereotypes that continue to permeate various aspects of Canadian society today. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, acknowledged in a 2014 report that there were over 1,000 cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women between 1980 and 2012. However, Indigenous women's groups argue that the number exceeds 4,000. Discrepancies in these figures arise from underreporting of violence against Indigenous women and girls, the lack of an effective database, and the failure to accurately identify such cases by ethnicity. From the territories to the prairies, the statistics paint a chilling picture.
I really enjoy going to Prince George. It was really sad, but it was also really good to see what people are actually talking about when it comes to the Highway of Tears. You don't really know until you're there the huge significance of it. You really put it into perspective how scary it actually is.
Missing and murdered Indigenous women, it should be brought more attention, but it's always, you don't know until you see it. And it can be anyone. It can be your sister, your mom, an elder.
Even you.
Even you.
That's why I'm so scared.
It's just atrocious the way people are treated out there. But it happens. It happens here. But you don't see it, or you try to pretend that it's not your problem. But it is. It's all of ours. And what little you can do is what you need to do, because it won't stop until everybody actually thinks it's a problem.
Yeah. And oftentimes, even the police that are the cause of the problem. I mean, there's so much distrust between police and Indigenous people because there's a very, very long history of police being very against Indigenous people. And we have all of the systems working against us, every single one, and have since the beginning of this country.
Well, it's engraved into the judicial system where it's always going to be biased towards people like us.
There's a few people we're talking about in this documentary specifically. One of them is a police officer in Calgary specifically who worked in like the Indigenous unit. One of the other people we'll be speaking with today is someone who was formerly in the RCMP and worked throughout their life, and they are someone from the Blackfoot community. We also have grandmother Doreen, who did a really awesome job with USAE throughout the years, guiding us and talking to all of the youth, especially about missing and murdered Indigenous women. And then the last one we'll be speaking to I'll say survivor because that is what it is, someone who survived losing somebody in these situations and someone who has dealt with the pain of actually losing someone that their loved one, and getting to experience and talk to them and having a firsthand of what needs to happen and who and what they have to say about the situation.
So how I got involved in the MMIWG movement was back in 2014. I remember there was a story around murdered and missing Indigenous women, and in 2015, it became my reality. On June 4th, 2015, my daughter was murdered in Edmonton. I remember looking and I saw the police car drive up, and I looked out and they were coming up the walkway, and I remember opening the door, and they said that they were there to inform me that my daughter had been murdered that morning in Edmonton. And I remember just screaming, and I remember calling for my son, and he came running in. He was just holding me, and I remember just screaming, wanting it to just not be true. And the nightmare began. The police were able to open the file to us and let us know what had happened that night. What we were told that night was the person that's responsible for my daughter's death. He was a low-level drug dealer, and he had a knife, and a conflict started. That was the situation that my daughter walked into, and she jumped in to help somebody. After she was stabbed, they said she walked about a block, and that's when she fell down. Somebody did come along. The ambulance came. They did get her to the hospital in time, and they did everything they could, and they weren't able to save her. Right where that red building is, right in the corner, is where we had the service about 10 days after she was murdered. Yeah, because the elders wanted to make sure her spirit leaves. And this is where we had a service. This is tough. This is tougher than I thought it would be. Yeah, it's just, just kind of not reliving, but
Holding the space.
yeah, that's what it is. And it's just so tough. I'll survive, I know.
Shoulders down.
Yeah. That's a little bit of like PTSD, I think, coming out. This place, I think, is always going to be, I don't know, there's just something about this place. Yeah, it's just brittle. It's been 8 years. It just doesn't go away. Yeah.
The issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women, we have to look at it as an epidemic, as a crisis. That's the way we have to look at it, because it's not right that so many have gone missing and it's not urgent according to our governments. I feel that the judicial system is not working currently, it's broken. Not only for Indigenous people, but for all Canadians, all North Americans. For me, there has to be a willingness to really look at what is happening and seriously address the issue on the missing, murdered, and Indigenous women. We can't do it alone. We have been struggling alone here as Indigenous people to try to create this awareness. Any person in the justice system, they have the awareness, but what are they going to do about it? That's my question.
Hello, my name is Alan Chamberlain. I'm a patrol sergeant with the Calgary Police Service out of District 5. I've seen a lot of community members who have had and have fear of police because of the stories. And those stories came from somewhere. The Indigenous community are 5% of the population, but make up 37% of the justice system. So if you're a police officer, you're more likely to run into somebody who's Indigenous. Why can't we offer a better service? Why can't we do something different and something better? My heart is close to MIWG. My traditional family from Pekani, my sister lost her daughter. So it hits home for me, and as an officer, I think that it just gives me more motivation to change. For many years, it's been one way of doing things. And ever since the community's voice has been being heard and the call for justice, I think that things are changing. We're trying things, trying new ways.
When I was accepted into the members of the RCMP, it was something that I always wanted to be. The work, it was something that I wanted to do, but I really became dysfunctional as a result of some of the things that I witnessed, because I dealt with the negative side of society. And there was a lot of things that I witnessed and I seen and I dealt with and I investigated. It took effect on me, and it affected my mental health. I think, honestly, if I was going to do it all over again, I wouldn't. Racism is a real issue. It exists in a lot of organizations, and the RCMP is no different. I think what they really need to do is really fully develop from knowledge people in the communities, from the Indigenous peoples, to design cross-cultural programs for members of the RCMP, for them to dispel some misconceptions of Indigenous peoples. They just need to have that capacity through training these members in order for them to be more aware in regards to Indigenous peoples.
The space that we're in right here, we call it the sacred space. This space is the only place in CPS right now where you can smudge, where you can find healing, where you can tell your stories in a good way and in a safe way. The story behind here is this space started off with a community member. She didn't feel comfortable coming to the police service to tell her story and able to find justice. I found that she was victimized twice, once by the perpetrator and then once by the system where she couldn't tell her story. So that was my first kind of poke on how do we do better? Building that relationship and believing. So when Indigenous women come and make a complaint or say this is happening, believing them the first time too. Because if you don't believe them the first time, why would they report again? Why are they gonna report the third time or the fourth time? I think that having space where they can tell stories, where they do feel safe and they are heard and they are believed is a crucial step, because we don't have the answers. You know, that's 135 years of that's proven we don't have the answers. You know, so let's try something different and let's work with community and have that understanding.
Any outfit in the RCMP, I know they collaborate with other police forces, but I think what they really need to do is to build capacity with the First Nations in order for them to properly address what's happening with our women. It is happening. It has happened. It's happening today. And it's not going to stop until the authorities finally make a concerted effort to collaborate and really address this so that this will stop. And really go out and find the evidence and put these people responsible to justice. Right now there's too much talk, there's no action.
It's not just one organization that needs to fix it. This is everyone's problem. It's not just the individual person that was murdered or has gone missing. It's not just the families, it's not just the police. Like, not one organization. What I've learned and what I'm learning is that it needs to be a collective thing that we're working together. As a society, we're pumping in a lot of money into a system that doesn't seem to be working. After Claudia was killed, I remember thinking, you know, I can't do this. I can't sit here years later and still be really broken like it happened yesterday. I need to do something, and I need to do whatever I needed to get through this grief and this devastation that I was feeling, that I was experiencing. And I immediately got into support group, and I remember going to my first meeting and hearing people's stories and thinking, I am not alone. Like, I knew that there were a lot of people in Canada or globally that were going through the same thing, with a number of Indigenous people in Canada, for example, that were going missing or that are getting murdered.
It's time that these issues are being heeded to, that people wake up and really actively pursue change along with us.
You know, Indigenous women, you know, have 3 strikes against them. They're born women, they're born Indigenous, and they're born Indigenous women. The justice system doesn't work for them. So how do we make it work for them?
One of the things that I know as families, what we could do is really, you know, be the voice of others, because there's still a lot of murdered and missing Indigenous women out there. They don't have a voice. So it's people like myself and other people that have to do that for them, to make sure that there is justice and there is a path forward for families to do the healing and to get better, so we're not stuck in that pain.
Sam, how did it make you feel watching the video for the first time?
I thought everybody had a lot of really good things to say. It was really interesting hearing everybody's perspective, and I think having each of them talk about a slightly different side of everything, I thought was really beneficial and really helpful.
The whole interview really brings all these different aspects together as one whole. From Elder Doreen to Jonathan to the police officer and to Edna, you see all these different aspects and how each one of these, from either generational to occupational, that there is a very big problem that they are trying to fix. There's going to be a better hope for it, but you do need to be a part of that action. You need to voice on what you want changed.
Yeah, and it's good that the police and stuff are actually like recognizing that like they are part of the problem and like they are building toward being more safe for Indigenous people.
I feel more comfortable now, like not knowing not all cops are like out for Indigenous people, and that there are some people in the police force like trying.
And then he's realizing it, like for how many years it's not working, that they're actually trying to go and start in communities and see where the problem's really starting and actually work around that and get more of a perspective on what they can do and how they can change. Each one of these people have had their own experience with missing and murdered Indigenous women, and them advocating and speaking out how they may have lost someone or how it has affected them really brings true meaning to change.
I think with this especially, if we're not willing to listen to people who have unfortunately had to go through this, then I don't see us ever fixing the issue, because those are who matters. We can talk every day about what we want to happen, but if we do not listen to the people who have had to gone through this, we're going in circles. And that is the most important thing, to support people who are still here and who have gone through something that no person should ever go through. And being able to support them and hearing what they had to go through.
Like Alan said, like, you know, people, like it's the believing us the first time, because it's not like we're all liars. Like we don't make this stuff up. It's like, no, this is like happening. And I think like, yeah, it's people's willingness to change and people's willingness to listen, engaging with the Indigenous community about how to make it better.
Judicial systems and the government and our schools are all something that needs to be worked together. You can't fix one and not have another one represented or talked about. So it is a really hopeful thing for the future that our youth and our parents, even learning from the youth, of how we can fix this or how we can just be acknowledging and aware of it. Because awareness is really one of the biggest steps to acceptance and fixing it.
Even though you could have the greatest tragedy and trauma happen in your life, there's so much good that comes out of that when you get through the other side. Through that connection, I was able to get involved in sharing my story, but trying to keep it a story more of hope and healing than staying in the pain. You do have to walk through the pain. You don't get away from the pain, but it's how do you get to the other side to be able to help others. And I think the more we see that and the more we experience that, the better it gets for everybody, even for the younger generation.
I see this moving forward through many different channels. I think individually there's a lot more awareness being created. People are starting to get it. The average Canadian is getting it because I see a lot more support for our people, our women and children locally than I ever have in all my 86 years of life. And it's our future generations that are going to bring this to the forefront of every Canadian.
Like actionable items that we're doing, our missing persons team has created an Indigenous missing persons investigator. So this constable will be responsible for all the MIWG, any missing persons that has an Indigenous aspect to it. They all are going to be paired up with an Indigenous social worker as well. So a couple of things that they will be able to do is build that relationship with the community and help with the investigation, but also help heal the understanding of missing persons and what we're trying to do. We definitely don't have it right. We are walking this journey. Sometimes we get lost, and I'm thankful that community will point us in the right direction.
How do we get people to care? How do we get that apathy? How do we change that apathy into empathy? What can society do? And I think one of the things is read the 231 recommendations from the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls Inquiry. See what's there. See if there's anything that you can take action on. What can you do better? The other thing is attend rallies and events.
I see a lot of positivity in our women, our Indigenous women. They have risen through the ashes and they're standing tall. And I have hope for the future that more awareness will be created, that more positivity will come out of this, and that there will come a time when we will stand in our own essence as we always have.
It can be done. We have a roadmap. We have community support. We have our song, we have our stories, we have our elders, we have our knowledge keepers. We have all the pieces for success and for a better world and to do better. It's up to the folks here every day making those decisions when you wake up. You know, are you gonna do better? Are you gonna be part of the problem or part of the solution? We're walking side by side on this journey of reconciliation, and we'll get there. We will get there.
Recent years have witnessed a surge in support for Indigenous families and communities, with the establishment of the National Public Inquiry and increased awareness of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Indigenous associations have played a vital role in providing political, emotional, and legal support, as well as advocating for the inquiry. Annual marches, vigils, documentaries, and awareness campaigns have united people in the pursuit of justice. Over the years, the narrative of Indigenous women's experiences has shifted from being a footnote to becoming a focal point. The stories of stolen lives and shattered dreams have resonated far and wide, igniting a global dialogue on the urgent need for change. As we continue on our journey to protect Indigenous women, we recognize that there remains too many untold stories and hidden truths lying beneath the surface. Our work is far from done. We must persevere, for there are still countless narratives waiting to be shared and numerous revelations waiting to be uncovered. We are far from reaching the end of this path, but together we will forge ahead until justice and protection are secured for all.